I'm Jane Applegath. This is the Epic Vision Zone, where bold ideas meet extraordinary leaders. What if reinvention isn't a one and done action, but a skill you can master for the rest of your life? And what if everything you've experienced, including your failures, has been happening to prepare you for the greatest contribution of your life? If you've ever wondered if it's too late to pursue a new dream or start over, Coach Jay Sargeant will completely change the way you see your future. At 78 years young, Coach Jay is an entrepreneur, teacher, coach, author of The Shift, The Gift of Reinvention. Shift is where Jay reveals the hidden forces that drive transformation and how ordinary moments become the turning points of an extraordinary life. Across 7 remarkable careers, from tennis professional and franchise developer to business builder and transformation guide, he says reinvention isn't starting over, but recognizing you're never finished, that life's greatest opportunities arrive disguised as uncertainty, and credentials will never matter as much as curiosity. A creator of the Shift Project, Jay's mission is teaching high achievers how to recognize the hidden patterns shaping their lives, embrace change with courage, and create meaningful new chapters, regardless of age or circumstances. Welcome, Coach Jay. Thank you for joining us here today.
Jane, it was such a good introduction that I feel like we're complete. I don't know if I need to do much. That was great. Thank you for having me here today.
You're very welcome. I'm so happy to have you. And as Jay and I were talking earlier, this is fabulous because reinvention happens all throughout life and it's just a mindset. And so Jay's going to teach us all about how that comes to being. So let's get started. You've reinvented yourself, Jay, 7 separate times. What's the biggest lesson all of those reinventions have in common?
Well, the number one pattern is credentials are overrated. I have never respected boundaries or credentials. That's the bottom line. Now, let me be really clear. If you and I, God forbid, got in some kind of an accident and we needed to be taken to Cedars-Sinai or Massachusetts General Hospital for an operation, we would be praying that the doctor went to med school, had a really good internship and a great residency. So I'm not being simple here. I'm saying in soft skill development, people who are charting some form of an executive life, owning a company, being an entrepreneur, those are where I zero in on credentials. The over-reliance on credentials are debilitating. And most people, it merges with, I'm not ready, I'm not good enough. And, I'll give you a quick example. I went from being a tennis professional, owning an academy and a summer camp and getting kids ranked all over the United States, putting a few kids into the pro tour. It was a glorious experience, as we shared earlier. I was at the top of my game. I had stringing money and a pro shop and 30 plus pros working for me. It was amazing, making at a very early age big bucks, as the kids say, bank. Whoa, I was doing well from the outside looking in, but on the inside, I wasn't inspired anymore. On the inside, I have no tolerance for emotional pain. I take a good punch, but from an emotional standpoint, when I'm not happy, I'm ready to shift or move. I just want to share that with people. So I went to the 5 wealthiest people I knew who children I had, wives, and have been teaching. One of them happened to be, interestingly enough, a name dropper here. I taught the Kraft family when, Bob ended up owning, of course, the Patriots. Jonathan is the president of the Patriots. He was in my Tiny Tot program, the 4 to 6-year-old program. When I met him, didn't come up to my kneecap. Now he's the president of a major sports franchise. But I went to 5 important people who I had positive impact on as a tennis pro. And I said, what am I? What do I do next? I'm unhappy. I want to move on. You're so wise and brilliant. What do I do? What do you call me? And they all said, Jane, sales. Oh my God, you need to go into, but with your ego, you can't sell pencils. You need to sell large concepts with big commissions. And it needs to be in an environment where you're standing on your feet and you're delivering a presentation. And when I heard that, I said, oh, that's great. Where do I get one of these? They said, well, hold on, hold on. One of them, God bless him, and I'm going to give him credit, Mark Roberts, family-owned Atlantic Steel, largest steel company in New England, set me up with George Naniff. And George Naniff was the king of franchising in the United States in 1981. Absolutely massive force in franchising. Set me up with that meeting. Now, I had the wisdom. I teach this. Sometimes I don't include this, Jane, in the story. But I knew that I had no credentials, none whatsoever. So what I did is I went down to Copley Square, Simon and Sons, Clothier, and I bought my first blue suit. Woo! And a white shirt and a tie. And then I went to Finelin's basement and I found a Mark Cross briefcase. Oh my God. I at least wanted to walk into the door and remotely look the part. Made me feel good. I go to meet with George Naniff, and he's in this massive, intimidating office. I got to admit, it was intimidating. He's way down the end, and he looked like a combination of the Pope and a warlord at this massive desk. And I go sit down in front of him, and immediately he says, very politely, Mark Roberts tells me you're a talent and that you may very well be a good fit for our company. We sell franchises here. Can I read your resume quickly? And I said, well, you can't read my resume because I don't have one. He said, oh, you've come to a job interview without a resume. That's interesting. Well, why don't you just talk me through your business background and experience? And I said, well, I have none. In fact, I don't even like business. In fact, if I'm at Logan Airport about to take a plane and I'm standing at the magazine rack, I am never going to read a copy of Fortune, Entrepreneur, or Success magazine. I'm not interested in that at all. I'm reading tennis magazine, golf magazine, Sports Illustrated sports magazine. So then he got this perplexed look on his face and he said, well, kid, what are you doing here today? What did Mark send you here for today? I said, well, here's what I know and you can confirm it. You sell $250,000 businesses by putting men and women into fancy hotels supported by Wall Street Journal regional ads. It's a well-qualified, well-funded audience of 50 to 100 people at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco, Plaza Hotel on Central Park South. Is that how you sell franchises? He said, yes. I said, then you need me. I'm your man. He said, what do you mean? I said, because when I'm standing up and speaking, you just tell me what you want people to do. I'm the best at that. Content isn't relevant at the moment. And he smiled. And I said, but wait, I can prove it. Is that your brochure over there? And they had one of those back in the day. Remember the trifold? It's a little inexpensive trifold brochure. I picked it up and I said, is this your franchise brochure? He said, yes. And I said, okay, I'm going to go into the lobby. Give me 15 minutes, bring in your entire sales force, all of your rugged salespeople, your great competitive salespeople, bring in your managers, your executives, and any co-owner. Load this place up, and I'll come back in 15 minutes and give a presentation. If it knocks it out of the park, hire me. If not, throw me out. End of story. I either am or am not what you need. Obviously, Jane, I'm not telling the story because I threw up on my shoes that day. I get in the office and I do this tour de force moment. I'm moving my hands. I'm being delightful. I'm changing my tonality. I'm moving. I'm grooving. I have deleted everybody in the room except for George Naniff because I don't have any friends in the room. In fact, the sales force probably wanted to assassinate me. Who's this young rube? You know, they're being competitive. So I deleted them like it's Spinal Tap, the drummer in Spinal Tap. They're gone. I got an audience of one, George Naniff. I deliver. When I'm done, George throws everybody out of the room. He says, get out. I want to be with the kid. He sits me down and he says, there was not one thing you said that was accurate. You didn't hit one detail right, but that was the neatest, most powerful presentation I've ever seen. We can smooth your edges. You can learn the details, but I want you in hotel rooms in America. Now, I had no credential. It's the obvious, perfect example of no credentials. And by the way, I had to learn a whole bunch of stuff. I don't want anyone to think that I didn't work my tail off before they sent me to Cincinnati for the first time. I learned a whole bunch, but I want people to know who are unhappy or who sense there's more that they can create in this lifetime. You're not stuck. You don't need another certificate. You don't need to rearrange the pencils on your desk and get everything right. That's pattern number one.
Mm. Jay, your story is so enlightening because what you brought to the room was magnetism and energy. And that is what the boss saw in you. And you just had the confidence to step in there and do whatever you had to do. Like he said, you got the details wrong, but it didn't matter because he saw in you, he felt in you the energy and the magnetism that you would bring to every room or every client that you would meet. And he was savvy enough to understand that. And really, that's sales. That's what sales is. I mean, it's
Yeah,
somebody who comes in and just bowls them over with such excitement. I always say enthusiasm is contagious. And
for
that's what you
sure.
did. You were
Yeah,
contagious. So kudos to you. But what a great story. I mean, I love it. And we'll get into the confidence because that is something that you had, I think, from your sport background.
for
Because
sure.
it requires a lot of practice and whatever. But see, a lot of individuals would be very intimidated by that. But you just bowled them over. But what a great story! Thank you for that. I love it. Well, here's a saying that you always have. You often think that people often think that reinvention belongs to the young, but you say it's never too late. And I have to tell you from that story, I can feel it. It's never too late. So why do so many people then believe that they're done in later life or that they're stuck?
I'm an expert modeler. My background, one of my many backgrounds, is in NLP, neuro linguistic programming. I
Mm-hmm.
wrote a book called Paradigms of Persuasion. The foreword was done by Richard Bandler, the originator with John Grinder of NLP. And, at the end of the day, I just feel that I've been blessed with great models. And by sharing with you, now people can be blessed by my model. I grew up in a little dinky room next to my mom and dad in my grandparents' apartment in downtown Boston, in Brighton, Massachusetts. My folks were madly in love at 12 and 13, waited till they were 17 and 18 to get married, waited a couple of years to have me, but didn't have enough money for a car or their own apartment. So we lived with my maternal grandparents, Lillian, for 5 years. She was my my mother for 5 years. And one of the things that I got a chance to witness was my grandmother lost my grandfather Jack when she was about 65 years old. And in those days, and I'm sure you're younger than me, substantially, Jane, but in the time when I grew up, women in my neighborhood didn't drive. There was only
Mm-hmm.
one car. Many women didn't get their license. My grandmother Lillian, Nana Lil, at 65 had no license. In putting my grandfather's effects together, he owned a very unsuccessful, dinky little hardware store, and he was a soft touch. He was the sweetest guy that ever lived. So everyone abused him. All these construction workers said, Jack, can I give you an IOU? I don't have the money for the tools. I don't have the money for the nails. I don't have the money for the wood. And he would write down in a little black book next to his cash register how much everybody owed him. He never collected a dime. When he passed, my grandmother found that book and was irate. She went and got her automobile license at age 65 to, on her own, drive all over the city of Boston, from East Boston to the North End to Chelsea to Revere, wherever they were. She'd knock on the door. The woman would come out invariably and she'd say, "Is your husband home?" Shame on him. He owes my Jack $7.20 for nails. I'm here to collect it. Bring him here. Tell him to bring a checkbook. She collected every single dime of debt. Got that license at 65. Now I want to flash forward to a story that should touch every heart. I ended up with my mom convincing my Nana Lil to go into the Hebrew Rehabilitation Center in Roslindale, Massachusetts. She went kicking and I mean, we had to literally carry her out of her apartment because she was falling down and injuring herself. 2 weeks while she was in the rehab center for the rest of her days, I was on the road. I came back and I went immediately to visit her. I thought, Jane, she was going to chew me out. I was girding my loins for a battle because she was a tough matriarch. And when I saw her, she beamed. She said, Jay, why didn't you get me in here earlier? This place is amazing. 3 square meals a day. We have treats in the afternoon. We have card games. We have movie night. We have mahjong. And I was stunned. And then she leaned forward and she said, Jay, guess what? When I was a little girl in Dorchester, Massachusetts, in the 2nd grade, I saw a little boy named Louis, and I fell madly in love with Louis. And then my folks moved from Dorchester to Brighton. And, kids, when you move, that's the end of that experience. I lost Louis. I found him here at the Hebrew Rehab. He's here, and we are in love. We are in love. Man, Jay, I have found my Romeo. It was absolutely stunning. On the last day I saw her, and I want everyone to feel this and share this. On the last day I saw her, I went to visit her on a fall afternoon, sun setting, getting a little chilly. She and Louis were sitting side by side in a courtyard with their walkers in front of them. And I went and I spent 2 glorious hours loving them loving me. And I kind of had to go back on the road. I knew that maybe this was the end. There was a chance I wasn't going to see her again. So I hugged both of them and I left. And when I left, I was on a walkway above them, where they couldn't see me, where I could take one more look and love them one more time. And as I looked through this glass and saw them down below, they stood up together because it was getting cold, and they started walking. The senior wiggle, which, by the way, I'm a little bit of a wiggler myself. They started wiggling on the walker, and they were so passionate about one another that every 2 steps they go, wiggle, wiggle, kiss, wiggle, wiggle, kiss. And that's the last I saw of her. So I'm blessed with a background where I have seen right before my very eyes, it is never too late to change. Ever, ever, ever. I had the great honor of being the keynote speaker for the California Association of Realtors, massive auditorium. And the guy in the front row had a walker. He must have been at least 90 years old. There were 10,000 people in the audience. I had my books and tapes and training programs with my staff on the back of the room. I'm giving what I'm considering to be a very inspirational speech, telling my story. But I'm watching that guy. I know you're a public speaker. You pick certain people out in the crowd because they're beaming back energy. They're giving you support and love, and you can feel it. You see some people in the crowd that are miserable, you, boom, make them disappear. But I kept looking at him periodically, and he was having the time of his life. When I was finishing the presentation, he stands up, grabs his walker, and he takes a beehive down this massive corridor to the back of the room where my staff is. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, isn't this exciting? I wonder what's motivated him. And when the thing's over, I run to the back of the room. He's number 1 in the line. And I said, what was it about my presentation that inspired you? What did you learn? He said, kid, I have been in real estate for over 40 years. You said a bunch of really good things that reminded me of what I do when I do it well. I picked up a couple of great ideas. Thank you very much. But the truth of the matter is I'm not buying your $100 course or book because I'm going to learn necessarily some new things. I create a $1,000 growth budget every year. and I haven't reached my quota yet. You fit within the quota. He's 90 plus years old, 40 years doing at the highest level what he does, and he's got a growth budget. You are alive as long as you let things come in. Open at the top is what we call it
Mm,
in LP.
mm, absolutely. I love that. Open at the top, open to opportunities. Yeah, that's it. People shut down because there's a society and a social issue with, especially in the northern cultures here in the United States and Canada, where they think that, okay, I've reached a certain age and society has told me that that's it. I need to, quit my job, shut down, sit around and
Oh,
watch the news all day long or whatever it might be. But today, and because we are living longer and we are living healthier with a good quality of life, Jay, because there's so many advances in science, the sky is the limit. I mean, just look at yourself. It's amazing. But yeah, I love that. Always stay open, because it's curiosity. I know we're going to get to that, but I absolutely 100% agree with you. It's always curiosity, and there's always something to learn. So wow, what a great story. You had a great model, a
I
mentor
sure
and
do.
a model, and that is you inherited her chutzpah, whatever you want to call it. You
I like
definitely,
chutzpah.
and yeah, you definitely inherited it, and it shows. And hopefully, that's going to trickle through to all the generations that come from your side of the world, because that is a gift. It's just a gift, and I love your grandmother.
I wanted to share one more part of the model for my fellow potential entrepreneurs out there. My mom and dad, as I've already described, come from very modest means. My father delivered newspapers all night long for the Boston Record American as a proud member of Local 25 Teamsters. My mother worked at Filene's Basement in a department store. And they always dreamed, and now you and I used profound words like being abundant. They weren't trying to be abundant. My mom and dad talked about being rich. Someday we're going to be rich, and we're going to be able to move from Brighton, Massachusetts, one town over, to Brookline. But oh my God, what a difference. What a difference. And I would hear that conversation all the time. And the way that they saw doing it, Jane, was really interesting. They were serial entrepreneurs. I learned entrepreneurship in our apartment on 19 Mount Hood Road, because in the living room, we became a shoe store every Tuesday and Thursday night. My mom would buy inexpensive black pumps, put rhinestones on the toes to make them special, and she would buy enough inventory it would be in a closet. I would run to the closet and she'd say, Jay, 7.5 for this beautiful woman. I'd go get the shoes. We sold shoes. Never made any money selling shoes, but they sold shoes because they wanted to climb upward. My mother, Jewish housewife, sold Chinese cooking classes in her little dinky kitchen to other Jewish ladies. They sold cha-cha and mambo lessons in the living room. My father sold felt hats to mobsters in the North End. And one day my mom found happy and sad clowns, the tragedy and comedy image, but they were in the form of clowns. My folks got enamored with those happy and sad clowns, spent every penny they had on reproducing them, putting them in tubes and inserting, I don't know what they were thinking, God bless them, because they had no money at all, but they took a big ad out in the New Yorker magazine to sell happy and sad clowns. The day the magazine came out, we thought the mail slot, we would need buckets under the mail slot. So I ran home from school. They came from work. We looked at the ground and there were 3 envelopes. And that was our biggest day. They lost all that dough. But here's what happened to them. They never lost their spirit.
Mm,
Within 48 hours, sometimes within 28 hours of something not exactly working, They were on again and dreaming again. And I don't want anyone out there to think they were losers, because my mom walked into Bill Seidenstricker's art glass store in Orleans, on the Cape, fell in love with his glass, went up to him eventually, took 2 or 3 exposures, but then got the guts up to say, "Hey, Bill, Bernie and I," that's my father, Gladdy and Bernie, "we can consign, if you'll consign this glass, we'll take it up to Boston and sell it for you. It'll be a win-win for both of us." My mom and dad sold Seidenstricker glass for 4 years and put my kid brother entirely through Harvard University, debt free, not $1 of debt to Harvard, with glass money, Seidenstricker glass money. So please, if you're listening in, credentials aren't that important, and you can start, you can change, you can be something different. Now, by the way, not quickly, Jane, I'm not a Pollyanna. I mean, if someone chooses who they are, the value they can add, the things that turn them on. You know the old canard. If you're doing what you love, you never work another day the rest of your life. This is my work. Do you think this is work? I've been looking forward all day long to get together with you, to tell these stories, to have some fun, to work with my little 4-person tech team to create the online program. I mean, this is joyful. So when you find what you love, it's not too late. It's never too late.
Never, never underestimate the power of a dream. That's what I say.
I love
So
it.
powerful. Yeah. Well, thank you, Jay. That was so enlightening. And I just love the spirit. Like you said, they never lost their spirit. And you might have touched on this a little bit, because what is the biggest mistake then that people make when they're trying to change their lives? Is it that, like you said in NLP, you want to stay open? Is it that they shut down? Or is there a pattern of some of these people when they just figure it's done, we're over?
Yeah, I like the word shutdown. Thank you. Because I think there's a shutdown aspect to it. And here's what I mean by that. There have been disappointing moments in my life. I mean, sometimes you land in a place and it's going really well. And again, you're not happy, and you sense that it's maybe won't last, or that you won't last in it. And at that moment, a lot of people get some form of depressed. My counsel, I've been teaching this for 50 years now. My counsel is there are no small moments. Stay active. You can't find your treasure while sitting in the Barca Lounger. You got to get up off the Barca Lounger. You have to respect that there are moments that are invisible, that you do not know where they're going. But if you're active, you can find those moments. Again, of course, Jane, I'm going to come up with a memory and a story, but I was in between one of those trapezes. As good as I was with George selling his businesses, at some moment in time, the guy who put me together with him, Mark Roberts, called me up and said, "Let's form our own franchise development company. You're now the king of this. Let's go do it." And I had a very bad night. I had a rough night because I don't like to disappoint people. Nobody does. I'm got an exceptional high level of placation and people pleasing. But I had to go into George Nadaff, who had given me this unprecedented opportunity, and tell him I was not only leaving, but I was going to compete with him. And I had one of those nights where I stared in the mirror and I started off just like in the movies, every 5 different ways to say the first line, but I didn't have to do it. I walked into the office. I opened up the door. George looked up and he said, "Kid, I know what you're going to say. Sit down." I said, "What do you mean, you know?" He says, "You're going to tell me you're leaving. You're going to tell me you and Roberts are going to compete with me. And here's what you need to know. You did everything you said. You were wonderful here. And from the day I met a guy like you, I knew I was leasing or renting. I would never own you. So God bless you. I pray that you do well. And you need to know, if you ever stumble, if you ever fall down and skid, cut your knee, the light is always on. You can always come back." Oh, and I've used that for many staff members and employees over the year who move on and go do something else. I model George Nana. So I formed my own franchise development company, and lo and behold, it's way more difficult than I thought. Way more difficult. When I was embraced by George and in the infrastructure of his company, and I was a straight commission salesperson, I had structure around me. Developing my own franchise development company, I had to go get clients. So I get 5 little terrible clients, God bless them, but they were dinky. They were the only thing I could get, and we were suffering. We were losing money, not making money. And to be honest, a little bit disappointing, slightly depressing. I'm not a depressive type, but a little bit down in the dumps. The moment where you really don't want to go out, the moment where you just want to stay inside. I get this phone call, and someone says, in this fancy part of Boston, Brookline, Massachusetts, Heathrow, there's this dinner party. Now, I'm not a dinner party guy. I'm selectively gregarious, but basically I like to be alone, if you want to know the God's honest truth. And so someone says, there's a dinner party and there's going to be some really good people there. You might want to go to this dinner party. And I did not want to go to that dinner party. It meant I had to bathe. It meant I had to smell good. I had to put on an outfit, the uniform. I had a big grin. I had to engage. And it was a Friday night, and I just wanted to watch ESPN, whatever sport was going on at the moment. But I said, you know what? You're stuck a little bit. You know what? Your little baby company is basically failing. You've got to get engaged. You got to go do something. I sit at this massive Italian marble table. The Italian marble table at this party was worth more than me. Okay. So we've got all these elegant people and there's art photography all over, Stieglitz and Man Ray. I mean, the place was amazing. I sit down and I turn to the guy next to me and I say, so who are you and what do you do? And it's Mitch K. Poor. Now, everyone on here is younger than me. I just 3 days ago turned 79. So I'm not 78 anymore. I'm 79. And I turn to this guy and he says, I'm Mitch K. Poor. It doesn't mean anything in 1981 to me when he says that. I said, well, what do you do, Mitch? He said, well, I'm the developer of something called Lotus 123. It's a spreadsheet program for an emerging industry called the microcomputer industry. There's only my software. The beginning of Microsoft is the Word program, and there's on the West Coast a company called Ashton Tate with a database management program. And I own and operate the spreadsheet program called Lotus 123. I then continue to ask them questions. Please, this is a lesson within a lesson. So if everyone's taking any notes, I teach this. This is part of the NLP sales model. Instead of jumping all over that, I precision probe. I ask, well, tell me about, I don't know anything about this computer thing. How big do you think it's going to be? And he describes an emerging wave of business, which blows me away. Now I'm stunned. And then I ask the most important question, and I want everyone to understand the importance of this question. Once I've allowed him to go for 20, 25 minutes, Cialdini wrote a book called Influencing. One of the most important chapters in influencing is the law of reciprocity. By asking him all these questions, I have delighted him. I've created deep rapport. When you ask people questions about themselves, they get to talk about themselves. It's the most enjoyable experience they can have. He's having a wonderful time. He then gets a little guilty. It's called the law of reciprocity. And he says, oh, I've been yakking about me. What do you do? And here comes the moment, twofold. I said, I own one of the most powerful franchise development companies in the world. And I am always looking for a new property in a new industry that's on the cusp of extraordinary growth. If you were me with a powerful franchise development company, what would you be looking to take advantage of this incredible new wave of business? He said, well, Jay, I would put a software retail store across the street from every computer land in the country because there isn't any software retailing. And they only want to sell the box. They don't want anything to do with software. And I said, well, is there such a thing as software retailing? And he said, Jay, I'm one of the only people making software. I know there's only 4 because I sell to them. There's one here in Boston, one in Washington, one in Chicago, and one in Los Angeles. So here's an intelligence test for our audience. What did I do the next day? We were suffering. I didn't have much money. In fact, I was a little bit broke, if I'm being honest. I went and bought on my own. I didn't ask any permission of anyone. I went to the Boston location. It was terrible. Got a ticket to Washington, D.C., a ticket to Chicago, and a ticket to Los Angeles. I just all in, put what I had on the table because I was thrilled with what he said. The one in Washington, D.C. was terrible. The one in Chicago was beyond terrible. And when I got to L.A., it wasn't Nordstrom's, it wasn't Bloomingdale's, it wasn't Williams Sonoma, there wasn't merchandising, it wasn't a brand that, took your breath away when I walked into the Pico Boulevard 1,700 square foot store. But it had vibrancy, it had customers, it had copter heads from Caltech standing around the four only pieces of computer hardware of the day: Ataris, Commodores, Trash 80s, and Apple IIe's. And they were playing Pong and using the few little pieces of software that existed in the world. But there was energy and there was vibrancy, and there was a kid behind the counter, looked like a surfer. And I went over to him and I said, "I'm looking for the owner." And he said, "Well, I'm a part owner." I said, "Oh, muzzle tough. That's terrific. Congratulations. I love the spirit. I've looked at all of these other locations in the country. You're number one. I can franchise it and make it bigger than big. Who's the decision maker?" He said, "Well, I'm not." And then the words came out that to this day bring hair raise on my neck. He says, "George Tate is one of the owners." Now, George Tate is Ashton Tate, one of the only three people producing software for PCs in 1981, and he owns this location. So I now have the imprimatur, the cachet of "brought to you by Ashton Tate." So I say, "Well, where is this George Tate?" And he said, "Well, he's not here. He lives in Venice." I get in a cab. Remember, I don't know anything about LA at the moment. I get in a cab. I have an address where this George Tate guy is. And I keep saying to the cab driver, "Jane, are you sure you got this right? Because I think I'm going to Bel Air. I think I'm going to the house next to Magic Johnson, to a gated community." We're schlepping through basically a very poor neighborhood in Venice before it was she. And he goes, "This is the address." He drops me off in front of this cruddy apartment house. I walk up a flight of stairs. I bang on a screen door, and a guy comes out with no shirt on, a big belly, a cigarette hanging from his lip, a pair of gym shorts when gym shorts were very little. Remember those? I mean, it was not a pretty picture. I was thinking of, a very powerful man. And there he was, George Tate. I said, "I am a franchise developer. You have the best retail store in America. I can make it the giant in the industry." He said, "Come on in." 1 hour later on a yellow pad, I got the exclusive right to Software Center International. We wrote the contract. I got a budget for development, and we sold 154 of those franchises in 18 months from scratch. The key is I got out of the Barca Lounger and I went to that dinner party on Heath Street in Brookline, Massachusetts. And I can tell story after story about how little insignificant moments led to another meeting, led to a contract, led to a bad contract, then a good one. So people just have to stay busy and engaged. That's my point.
Oh, yeah. The first thing I thought of, Jay, when you went down this road, and thank you for that inspiring story, oh my gosh, is move out of your comfort zone. The comfort zone is not your friend. It's, you said like you just wanted to sit, watch something on ESPN, chill out, and it was comfortable. And because your mind was saying, this is much better. This is, I know you want to do this because this is something that will keep you safe. This is something that will keep you cozy. But by deciding to move and do that and go to the party, you made that move to go beyond your comfort zone that particular time in your life. And that's what changed everything. The moments that we never never take anything for granted in your circumstances, because there are things that the universe will hand you if you just listen to it. If you just take that one step and move beyond that stuckness, like you said, because we can all wallow in our sorrow. I mean, misery loves company.
Mhm.
It really does.
Yeah,
Whether it's
true.
for your own misery or other people's misery. But yeah, oh my gosh. Wow. Thank you for that story. That was amazing. Oh, and today those stories are pure gold, Jay. I mean, to go back in those days when, all of this tech stuff was just budding. There was, like you said, there were no software companies at all. This is going to be so interesting to share this with people who are younger, because they don't know that. I mean, it was really, really an exciting time, but we just didn't know it. Well, confidence, and here's something that I know that you have a lot of, because you just start to talk with these strangers and you put pieces of a puzzle together like nothing else. What do you mean when you say that confidence is often rented before it's owned? And I
Yeah,
think you just gave a story of that.
yeah. You know, the some people tell me, and I've been counseling and building teams, very large sales teams for years, so I've interfaced with lots of people climbing up the ladder. And one of the things that I go back to over and over again is, what's your model? What are you modeling? What are you learning? What are you picking up from the universe? And how bold can you be when you find what you want? See, a lot of times people find something really good, but then they chicken out because the feedback around them. I'm going to tell you a story, but you said something that I haven't thought of in so many years. We used to teach, probably 20 years ago, in NLP classes for corporate clients of ours, keep 2 sheets of paper. One sheet of paper are 5 people who, no matter what happens, love you and are positive. They will find something good in virtually anything. That's your go-to list if you ever get in the dumps. Know them, get them on speed dial. People who will find the goodness, the learning in anything. But then create another list, please. And that's the list of the 5 people that you know that no matter how good anything is, they'll find the flaw. They're going to find you can't do that thinking, and avoid them at all costs. And when in doubt, call the good list. As good as the software, and I'm going to admit something kind of weird here, but as good as the Software Center International campaign was, it was a great moment in my life. It came to an unfortunate ending. Somebody bought the company, disbanded our division. I end up at lawyers' offices on Century City, and they say, within a matter of weeks, we're shutting down your division. And I could not argue the case. It was a financial decision. We were killing it. So again, I found myself in between trapezes. And this one wasn't when I was high as a hog and I moved because I was emotionally not satisfied. This one was out of necessity. Now, thank God I had a few dollars in my pocket. I wasn't profligate. I didn't spend all of that money. But I had a moment of deliberation, and I called up George Nadeff because he said the light was always on. And I called him up and I said, I had a huge campaign, and for whatever reason, it doesn't exist now. What do you think? And he said, Jay, this is the most amazing timing ever. I am creating a new franchise called Boston Chicken, became very successful. I'm creating Boston Chicken. It's going to be based in Manhattan. I would love to fly you and the new bride out on my nickel. I'll send you 5 or 10,000, wire you money tomorrow. I'll take all the furniture from your home. I'll relocate it. You'll be in mid-Manhattan. You'll have a budget. You'll have a bankroll. You'll have equity. You'll have bonuses. He describes this entire thing. Now, I should have been ecstatic. And my bride at the time right now, I'm 37 years old, just so people and my wife was 21, or just turning 22. We're madly in love. And I go up and I tell her about this George Nadaff offer. Boston Chicken, we're being relocated to the most exciting city in the United States. I'm an opera fan. I'm a culture freak. I love theater, blah, blah, blah. I said, we're going to be in the most beautiful, powerful place with a great contract. The moment those words came out of my mouth, I started not wanting to do it. I started having resistance. I started going, do I want to be a chicken empire developer? Do I want to talk about chicken ever again as long as I live? Do I want to stay in franchising? I've already done it at the highest level possible. I don't tell Lee, who's now, by the way, in heaven, God bless her. And if people read the book, some of the chapters about her leaving her body and becoming pure spirit are just great chapters. But at the end of the day, I don't tell her immediately because I know she'll be disappointed. She goes to sleep 2 nights after I get this offer, and I go outside to a swimming pool in Marina Del Rey. We're staying in a temporary Oakwood Garden apartment because we're in transition. And I'm sitting on a chaise lounge looking at the beautiful Southern California sky, the water, the Olympic swimming pool is wafting up and down in front of me. And I'm thinking, I'm deliberative, and I'm in between those traditional trapezes. And a bald-headed Jewish guy in Bermuda shorts with a baseball cap sits down in one of the 250 chaise lounges right next to me. They're all empty. It's 11 at night. He sits down next to me, and he says, "A penny for your thoughts." I said, "Oy, you don't really mean that, because next to the word loquacious in the Webster dictionary is my picture. You really want me to tell you what's going on?" He says, "Please, I have all the time in the world. I'm dying to hear what you're thinking about." I went 15, 20 minutes of giving him, my existential crisis. Whither thou goest, what am I going to do next? And he leaves and he comes back immediately with a book. And the book, the spine is broken. There's writing all over it, notes everywhere. Clearly, this has been his Bible. He says, "You're going to read this book, and this is what you were meant to do with the rest of your life." This is a stranger. And I said, "Well, gee whiz, can I give you some money this is lovely. You're giving me." He says, "Not only am I giving you the book, I'm going to sit here while you begin to read it." I said, "Okay." I get to page 11. I am blown away. I've never been more excited in my entire life. I'm reading that 11 pages. I turn to say thank you, and he's gone. I never saw that man again. I ran upstairs. The book was Frogs into Princes, the seminal work of NLP 40 years ago by Grinder and Bandler. And I know that God put me on the planet to teach these 11 pages. I know I can build an empire, but more importantly, forget the empire, because remember, one more time, I'm not money motivated, but I knew I could touch people, that this would be material that would be hugely significant. I go upstairs to the bride and I say, "We're sending the money back. We're not going to New York. I'm going to be an NLP trainer. I'm going to train these 11 pages. I'll read the rest of the book later on, but this is what I'm going to do." And I sent the money back, and I rejected the offer. Started the next day in my underwear on a card table in a rented 1-bedroom apartment in Marina Del Rey, calling up contacts and saying, "I'm an NLP trainer, send me money. I'm going to change the life of your sales force." That grew to a $7.2 million training business. And I'm not bragging, Jane. I'm just saying the lessons are very, very clear. Do what you want to do. Figure out what I teach in the course that I'm about to launch online is understand where your value is. I know what my value is. My value is words, storytelling, using stories to teach and inspire. Whatever I've done. I teach pickleball. I am 79 years old, and I have 2 champions on the tour that I developed from 11 to the now 14 years of age. I can barely move my feet. I'm post-cancer with neuropathy in my feet, but I'm out there teaching pickleball to champions because I can, because it's enjoyable, because it's fulfilling, because it keeps me relevant and alive. And now, God bless it, to take this book and create an online course. So that's what people need to know. They got to stay busy, stay active, and be able to find something they love and take a chance. Take a chance.
Right.
Take some risk.
Right. Like you said, stay open. There is magic in space. And I don't mean like outer space. It's we get caught up in the day to day, which I call becomes static in our lives. And that static keeps us from connecting to what's important to ourselves, to our soul, to our heart. And once we make some space to understand what's trying to connect with us, like you were
Mm.
sitting in that beside that pool and this stranger comes up to you, you were sending out a signal. I mean,
Mm.
what were the chances of that ever happening? And that man coming beside and like you said, you never saw him again. That man was sent to you. It was sent to you because you were putting out a signal and you made space to sit and contemplate what your next step was. That's
Mm.
what it was. It's really amazing. And all of the opportunities that you have had have come to you because you have a frequency that's beyond. I mean, you really tune in, is what I can say. Because I always
Wow.
say we're broadcasting towers and we're always broadcasting a signal. But when you said you align with your values, that signal becomes strong. It's not
Ooh.
broken up by all the static that
Mm.
interferes with our life. And we all have it. I mean, we have responsibilities, things happen, you know, but we just have to make the space to be open to what's trying to connect with us. And oh my God, what a story. Because that was it.
Oh, that.
You were available. You were available for that connection. And
Yeah.
it found you. So wow, amazing. Like if these weren't true stories, I would say, well, that's just a story. That never happened. But yeah, that's amazing. Well, what's your secret to remaining resilient through life's reinventions? Because as you said, it's a roller coaster, and we all have moments where we just get so down, and we're like, really, I have to start over again. You know, like you said when you stopped with the tennis pro, you said, who am I? What am I good for? This is what I've been doing all my life. And then you had the other occasion when you were doing the franchise industry, and then you starting all over again. Where does that resilience come from? Is there any tips that you can share with our audience?
Yeah. I'm hungry. And I know what I'm hungry for. I'm not hungry for a bigger bank account. I'm not hungry for more property. I have lovely things. I have more. God has been very good to me. What I'm hungry for is relevancy. I'm curious. When I find something that intrigues me, and I just basically say the same thing to everyone over and over again, find what you love, and then your mind will never stop thinking about it. And the more you think about it, the more you'll affirm it and the more you'll manifest it. And, at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you an odd story, just as an example. I grew up in a neighborhood adjacent to the Italian neighborhood in Boston. The Jews lived in the West End and the Italians lived in the North End. And my family worked every day with Italians. So there's an emotional connection with Italian culture, Italian language, Italian food that is very powerful in me. I am now 79 and I have been studying Italian every day, an hour a day or more for 15 years. And it doesn't mean that, I just went to Italy and I got to speak Italian all day long. It was delightful, but I'm not a native speaker by any means. I'm kind of an intermediate, but I enjoy it and love it. And because I'm so curious and I love it so much, I'm engaged with it. No one has to say, when I was in high school, I didn't do any work. I never figured out what the periodic tables would ever mean to me in physics class. I didn't get what trigonometry or geometry was going to do. But now, as an adult, when I find a subject that's intriguing, and that's what I basically say, I'm not looking for someone who's me, because I'm a snowflake like you're a snowflake. God gave us differences, amazing differences. Every brain processes information in an entirely different way, generalizes, distorts. and deletes information automatically. So we all have a different reality, but something that we all share is that when something interests you, then you can dive into it. Then you don't need somebody to say, "Did you study your Italian today?" No one has to ask me to do that. No one has to ask me. We've got 7 moving parts in our new little business called Shift. But I'm thinking about them all the time, even if I'm with the kids, even if I'm at a birthday party, even if I'm watching a show with my wife. There's a part of me that is always engaged with and excited about developing something that I care about. So find what you care about. Now, the example I like to use, just so that I'm very practical, is I want to touch the heart and soul of someone who's riding along in a truck in Akron, Ohio. They're a plumber's assistant in Akron, Ohio. Their dream is to 5 or 10 or 20 years down the road to own a beautiful home in Akron that has 3,000 square feet, 4 bathrooms, and a swimming pool and a room for a pool table. But as long as they're riding along in that truck, they're not going to own that home. They have to start dreaming today of owning their own truck, then scaling that to 3 trucks, and 10 years from now have 10 trucks. If that's what excites you, if you know that you're very good at being a plumber and that you've got people skills you're willing and management skills that you're willing to develop, then no matter if it takes you 2 years to own your first truck with your picture and your stencil and your branding on it, so it takes 2 years. But 2 years, if you can do that, you can have another truck. And if you can do that, you can have 5. So I say stay curious. It's what keeps our minds alive.
Right. Yes. Curiosity, the heart of creativity.
You bet.
Absolutely. And vision. Have a vision you're so passionate about that nothing scares you. That's what
Yeah.
I say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's your dream, right? The power of a dream is unbelievable. Well, thank you, Jay. I mean, I know there's so many individuals out there that do have a dream, and then like you have that list where you have the people you can go to and the ones that don't. Make the list of the people that will be the naysayers and do not share that dream with them because they'll just steer you in another direction.
For
So,
sure.
absolutely. Yeah, because they gave up their dream and they're probably jealous that you have one. I mean, there's so much psychology that goes into all this now that we, understand more of. But here's a question for you, Jay, that I think is very relevant today, and it applies to both the young and the old, but more so the young people. With the advent of the internet, people are losing their ability to communicate, and you are an incredible communicator. What's one communication skill that everyone should learn?
Yeah. You know, because I know you understand the NLP model. Our most important contribution to communication, to sales development, to entrepreneurship is the ability to connect and create rapport. Part of my course, the online course that we're about to launch, major piece is how to walk into any room, any place in the world. Theoretically, what you want to be able to imagine for yourself is I could put you in an airplane with a parachute and drop you any place in the world, even when you have no language skills, and you should be able to hit the ground and make friends and build rapport, create safe and secure connections. So the number one thing that I think, I mean, all of the members of my family that were the most successful and most importantly, the happiest were the people, the ones who
Mm.
made those kinds of rich connections. And you can only do that by paying attention to the other person. We talk about pacing and matching and mirroring other people's behavior. It's so important. I know that even in conflict, I can find a way consciously, not unconsciously. I have conscious techniques to break down dissatisfaction and create an alliance. And I think that everyone, no matter what they're doing, because literally we are communicating all the time. I am blessed with 3 daughters. I have a 34, a 31, and a 54-year-old daughter, and I've got three grandsons. One little baby, he's only 4 months old. The other two are already off to college. One of them's a graduate. But at the end of the day, what's relevant is that they are all really wonderful communicators, because I'm going to brag a little bit. I taught them what you and I are talking about from the time they were in the crib: how to connect, how to build rapport, how to reach out, how to, instead of having an internal frame of reference, have an external frame of reference. Develop your sensory awareness so you see reactions and you can customize your comments or presentations, interactions consistent with the other person's model of the world. Learn some upgraded communication skills. It will change everything in your life: your marriages, your parenting, your church relationship, civic relationships, and certainly business and entrepreneurial pursuits.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. And it's so needed in today's world because really, the young people, they don't even speak on the phone very well. Not that they use it very often for speaking, just for texting. And even those aren't in real language, they're all in little bits and pieces of whatever. So it's a
You know,
dying skill. It is.
you know, I'm not a Luddite. You obviously know from my story, my little bit of storytelling today, that in 1981, I launched something in the PC. So I'm a computer guy. And I love AI. I'll be the first to admit it. I love it because what used to take me and a whole department, I owned a company with 675,000 salespeople. And so I used to have a big marketing department. We can scale and have two or three people using artificial intelligence to create copy and brochures and business plans, things that we labored over. But the one thing no one can ever recreate is you and I. The ability. So if people want to be entrepreneurs, yes, they can get great brochures for nothing. Yes, they can have Fiverr make a website. They can do all of these things are now available, and I love it. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur and make a breakthrough in your life, you're going to have to secure money, invest money, talk to people. You become the sales department, and nothing sells like belly to belly, eyeball to eyeball. You're going to have to do that to be that kid in Akron, Ohio is going to have to create relationships with vendors, with a leasing company to get the trucks. He's going to have to negotiate with the person who's going to stencil the car. He's going to have to go out and put door hangers on or create a digital marketing campaign in Akron to say, I'm here. And then once you say you're here, you got to get on the phone and talk to someone. You got to go out and make a bid. You got to compete. And these are all soft communication skills that AI will never replace.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. I love AI. It's so convenient, but the soft skills are what are at the top of job requirements these days, the soft skills. And
You bet.
those are things that, yeah, that they don't teach in the school. So, absolutely, your timing is right on. Well, tell us about your book, Jay. What inspired you to write Shift, The Gift of Reinvention?
I have been telling my daughters these stories in this book their entire life. They've heard the Ray Sprinkle story, the George Nadav story, the guru with the dot in his forehead story, the Jay with his nose above the waterline rebirthing story, the Software Center International. They've heard them all. There's lots of very funny stories in the book. And what they came to me about 2 years, they've been coming to me forever, but intensely as I get closer to God, unless, there's an expiration date. We all have one. So my kids come over and they say, Dad, your great grandchildren will never know Papa Jay's stories. They'll never know unless you tell them. Can we hold? And they would come over with their iPhones and want me to, like a dancing bear, tell stories. And I say, yeah, it's not going to work for me. About 7 months ago, I just sat here at this computer and started writing a detailed outline. And then from an outline, chapter after chapter, all I wanted to do is create a memoir so that my future great grandchildren would know these stories and learn something from them, get a giggle from them. As I wrote the book, I realized, wow, there are some patterns in here that are incredibly revealing and useful. Why not take it one step further and create a training, an online training program? And I didn't want to create a cohort that costs $1,000 or $10,000. I'm not that kind of a guy. I just wanted to create a very inexpensive online course that would get these stories and these, what we talked about, out in the world and create a community. Now, obviously every time you do something, you have the ability to offer support through Substacks, through short form Rails, and through, of course, Facebook communities. So I thought I'll write a program and then I'll live with all of these future entrepreneurs for the rest of whatever God gives me. And I'll create some more, a couple thousand success stories in the next 5 years. That's what Shift, the book, started as, and now it's created into a program. And so I want people to go to my website, Jane. It's pretty simple. It's the shiftproject.academy. And we've got a reinvention readiness scorecard that they can get and check it out.
Wonderful. Well, yes, I'm so glad that your family was at you to write the book, because they knew instinctively that this was something that wouldn't even just serve their family, but serves the world. And of course, that's something that I know has been in your heart for a long time, because you had those stories that you were telling us. And it's really about, giving back. We're all here to live and learn, and then giving back, because that's what comes with age, is wisdom. And the wisdom that we can share will hopefully impact those that are coming up, and they learn from those that have been and gone through all of these things. So give us an idea then. I know you've shared a lot of stories with us, Jay. Is there one that is more powerful from your book that we haven't explored yet? What would you say was the most powerful story in Shift? And maybe we've already talked about it.
I'm going to tell one that has nothing to do with business, if it's okay with you.
Sure.
When my wife of 28 years started coughing and couldn't control her cough for days, and she was the healthiest person I ever knew. I met her at 125 pounds. She had one of those glorious bodies that God gives once in a while, where her metabolism was so on fire that she just was fit her whole life. We were a wellness family, all kinds of organic food, prayer. We were very active in our church. And she had animals and dogs, and surrounded by love. She was the head of our prayer ministry for children. She helped reconstruct the schoolyard in our neighborhood. She had all of the ladies in the neighborhood in a prayer group. She had the most perfect life. And then at age 49, she got incredibly sick. And at that moment in time, we went to St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica, and they took a quart of liquid from her body. Her lungs were so full. That began a 2-year battle versus lymphoblastic lymphoma. And from the minute we heard it, it was like 5% recovery rate. But she fought like crazy to be alive. She wanted to be with her kids. And that was her major motivation. And at the end, when she basically didn't win the physical battle, we had a moment that I want everyone to understand. We got a chance as a family to walk her across that celestial bridge, because we knew she was leaving for a whole week. She didn't get hit by a bus. They pulled the equipment off after 2 years at City of Hope, and over a 6-7 day period of time, she basically expired and went to God. And in that period of time, we created prayers, and people of every spiritual and religious denomination came to be with her and pray over her. The children, 'cause she was an actress and a great reader of children's stories, my kids got to bring in their 10 favorite books, and she couldn't talk anymore. She was, in a trach and had no breath. But they sat beside her and read her all the stories that she read them. We played the music that she loved. We prayed over her. And when finally she was about to leave the body, I got the chance to be with her alone. She was about 85 pounds and purple and bald, of course, and the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. In that moment, she was more beautiful than anyone. She was Catherine Deneuve and Grace Kelly times 10 to me in that moment. And we were alone, and there was a dapple of light coming through a small window at City of Hope. I lay down in the bed next to that bag of bones, and I said to her, darling, our favorite movie is Groundhog Day. You've got to live till you learn the lessons. You've learned all of your lessons. This is our Groundhog Day. This is the most perfect day we have ever lived, and it will live on for the two of us, wherever realms we're in, forever. And every time I would tell her that story, she would purse her lips and ask for another kiss, till eventually she closed her eyes and went to God. So we're here to support one another. We're here to love one another. We're here to take care of one another. And if you take care of that, the rest takes care of itself. It's my favorite two
Mm,
chapters in the book.
you're
Thank you
beautiful.
for asking. Thank you for asking
Thank,
that.
thank you for sharing. It really is, you know, something that we reflect on, but we take life for granted because we're
Yes.
here, and every day, is a new day if we embrace it. And I always say I'm grateful for this day because it's another day and we're here experiencing it. So, yes, that's a beautiful story. Thank you so much, Jay. Well,
Thank you.
give us some idea then into your shift project, because I know that this is near and dear to your heart, and who it's for.
Well, I originally thought it was for old geezers like me who might want one more glorious chapter in their life. And lo and behold, I learned as we've begun to share it, and we've got a whole bunch of people taking the sample program. We've got a whole bunch of people who have read the book. It turns out to have much more appeal to people in the middle, people who have done pretty well but are dreaming of a next chapter. It's attractive to the 25 to 35-year-old crowd that has all of that education dad, and that it doesn't have the same path that we all had in traditional business development. They're going to be forced into being creative and entrepreneurial. So what I've done is I've created a course that is literally, I'll just share it. It's $99 for hundreds of hours of training. I'm sharing the entire NLP communication model. We're creating a blueprint, lots of journaling, lots of stories, taking some of the stories that I've shared with you, Jane, and parsing them. What's the lessons in what's the
Mm.
complex substructure, this surface structure and then substructure? What are we getting at? And so I just want to hang with everybody, share that information, and create a community, because I think that we can have some impact. And it's a pizza and a movie night can change your life. That's the whole investment.
Wow, I love that. No, but take the story and then decipher the message, because yes, there are messages within the stories, as I've been learning and voicing here, because everyone has their own take on a story. And it's interesting to see what other people hear and feel from a story. So it's a great way to learn. And putting it in a real life story shows that it can be possible, or you can overcome, or it is, something that even though you think you're down, there's another day tomorrow where there's something brighter that's coming. Yeah, it's wonderful. Well, thank you. It sounds terrific and so
Thank you.
reasonable. Like you said, it's really going to be a great way for people to come together, have communication, discuss stories, and the lessons that we can take with us throughout our lives. And speaking of lessons, if Jay, if to our listeners, if there was one lesson from today's conversation that we would want people to walk away with, what would that be?
Find your value and connect it with your passion, and the rest eventually takes care of itself if you're courageous enough to step towards the light. There's a
Mm.
cosmic egg, there's a piece of light. if you know what you're good at and you find what you're curious and passionate about, and you have to take that step towards the light, potential is enormous, unlimited potential. That's what I want people
Right.
to know.
Yes, we have unlimited potential. We really do,
We
even
do.
according to science now, which is really interesting. It's things that they probably didn't want us to know, but we do have unlimited potential. So it's amazing. Well, Jay, you gave us your website information, which we will have available to everyone. Is there any other that you would contact information that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I want them to really go to the website first. Of course, we're developing the Substacks and the YouTube page and all of that. We're only 6 weeks old, so we've paid attention to our website, to the online training program. I've transcribed word for word without AI. I didn't want the avatar to read my 26 chapters of my book. So I spent 9 hours and 38 minutes reading every word of it. So somebody's going to get all those chapters. They can listen to it. Anyway, yeah. So go to the website, and I have to look up and see it. The shiftproject.academy, but I'm sure you'll lay it out there for them.
Yeah, no, thank you for repeating that. And we will have that available for everyone to go to. And because we're here on the Epic Vision Zone, I have one last question. If your life were an epic story, which I believe it is, what would the title be?
Boy, I'm almost stuck on unlimited potential, or there are. I love the idea of there are no small moments. There because I can't tell every single story that I have, Jane, but I absolutely know that if people just stay active and they appreciate them, because I've compressed everything here. But the meeting where I met the person who sent me off to Florida, who then a year later, someone in the audience in Florida, I don't know how they even knew my name, gave me a call on a Tuesday morning, brought me to Vancouver. That became a $1 billion business. But just people need to believe that there are some openings. Just keep your eyes open, stay aware. So I would say no small moments.
Yes,
My
I love that.
No small moments.
Yeah, that's the one that resonated with me. That's absolutely perfect. Well,
That's it.
thank you again, Jay, for reminding us that reinvention isn't about starting over. It's about becoming more fully who you've been preparing to be all along. And once again, for information and to connect with Jay, go to the Epic Vision Zone bio pages where you will find all of his contact and social media information. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at Jane Applegath. Look me up at janeapplegath.com and like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Epic Vision Zone. Sending you much love and gratitude. Until next time, stay visionary, stay bold, live epically.